All right, guys, we just want to welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, we make our 2023 preview and prediction for the Stanford Cardinal. Complete revampment of the coaching staff. Troy Taylor replaces David Shaw, who resigned this past season. He'll also be the offensive coordinator. Past 4 years at Sacramento State, 30-8 record. Bobby April III, past 5 seasons as Wisconsin's outside linebacking coach under Paul Chryst. He'll be manning the defensive side of the ball. And, the biggest headline for the Cardinal, the program has quickly turned into a complete dumpster fire with a bit of a C average head coaching hire, Nick. In the last couple of seasons, I was able to perfectly dissect this program and why they've been going downhill. Just a quick summarization. The offensive line failed to develop in that area, the depth in the trenches. Same goes on the defensive side of the ball. They've just not been able to keep it adequate enough. And then, of course, one thing that's really big in college football right now, you're seeing it with teams like Wisconsin and Iowa, the transition of offenses. They were known for running downhill, I formation, physical brand of football, and that wavered instantly overnight following Bryce Love's departure. This running game has just been awful since. Now, just numerous years ago, and they were not able to ever recapture it or try a transition attempt. And that's led to this program going from one of the wonders of college football, top program competing for, New Year's Six Bowl bids, Pac-12 title games, and potentially even championships. No longer. That's gone, Nick. Very sad to see David Shaw's tenure end.
It's disappointing. I mean, David Shaw took over a captivating team once Jim Harbaugh left back to the NFL, coaching the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, he took over a program that was in a good spot, but it was going to be a difficult challenge to keep up that sort of energy when you have a new head coach step in there, and he really did a great job. I mean, the first 3 seasons were 11, 12, 11-win seasons. They won the Rose Bowl. They lost another Rose Bowl. They won they tied first place in their Pac-12 division 3 years in a row. They were playing the conference title game. They won back-to-back conference titles in 12 and 13. Bit of a drop-off in 14, but they won the title in 15 again, winning the Rose Bowl. And then since 2019, it's been a disaster. 4-8, 4-2, 3-9, 3-9. Just absolutely pathetic numbers. This team has struggled over and over again. And like you said, it was the issue with the offensive scheme. It just was not working anymore. That type of play got beat out in college football. And I think, Troy Taylor, I don't think is a great hire. I agree with you to see hire. Grabbing a guy, coach of the FCS level. Sure, Sacramento State's been good this past couple of seasons, right? They've played well. They're 12-1 this past season, 9-3 before that. Obviously, making some appearances in the playoffs, struggling in the playoffs, though they couldn't find their way through after winning the Big Sky. I don't think Taylor's a great hire. I think, like you said, it's a C hire. It's a questionable move. He's going to be calling the plays as well. It's very interesting to see the direction this goes. Obviously, a lot up in the air with the Pac-12 falling apart overnight, and it's not helping a school like Stanford, who finds itself in a very tricky situation with a football team that's really stuck in a dead position right now.
Look at the offensive side of the ball. One thing I just said was that Bryce Love departed and the running game fell apart. That wasn't exactly true. He was still a game breaker for them in 2018, but their running game was just awful that year when he returned for his senior season after a 2,100-yard campaign the season earlier. Since 2018, though, the run game has just been flat-out poor, among the nation's worst. And the big reason for that, Nick, is just the lack of development up front. Obviously, they did have good players, and they still recruited the position very well, but they didn't develop these guys really at all. Drake Nugent, I think he was really good, and he's probably going to make some waves in the NFL. He heads to Michigan, though, so I will give Stanford some credit for his development there. But it's flat out disappeared at other positions. Levi Rogers, only starter that is back, allowed 20 pressures and 4 sacks. Wasn't good at all at left guard. Logan Berzins will step in at center, 6'3", 295. He was a solid run blocker, was terrible in pass protection. Redshirt freshman Lucas Hayer steps into the right guard position. Jack Lear at right tackle played 261 snaps over 4 games. He allowed 8 pressures. That's not great. Alec Banks transfers in from Harvard at left tackle. 47 pressures over the last 2 seasons. The unit is not good one bit. They were awful even with talented players. One of the nation's worst offensive lines at first glance, Nick. And that's, the sole reason why this running game's not been good, because they were pulling in high-end 4-stars, even 5-star recruits that were very good players coming out of high school. Where are they now? Maybe Walker Little is one guy you can allude to that made it to the league with some raw talent. But other than that, this was an offensive line factory at one point. That is long gone. Probably will never be seen again.
Zero development here. This team is just poor on the offensive line. Levi Rogers, the only starter return, but he was not great with the 4 sacks given up in the 20 pass rush. This is a bad unit overall. They tried to make some work in the portal. It wasn't enough. Bringing in Alec Bank is their only real addition from Harvard, a tough jump from the FCS level anyway. It's a bad unit. It's not a good unit at all. They're just going to be struggling across the board, which is disappointing for a program like Stanford. That was their calling card. They're fantastic in that regard, and now they've fallen off a cliff. They cannot pass block at all. They cannot run block at all, and that's an issue for a team that really was heavy relying on the run. You saw that with the rush yard per game's dropped to 107 this past season. It's just poor for this team. They're going to struggle this year again.
They lost 9 players in the portal, 6 of them on the offensive line, only added 2 players. They return only 2 starters. They lose their top passer in Tanner McKee. He went to the NFL draft, lose 3 of their top 4 pass catchers. Coming into last year, wide receiver was one bright point for Stanford. I certainly alluded to some of the talent they had. Bryson Tremaine, Elijah Higgins, Michael Wilson. Those guys are all gone. Benjamin Yursick, though, he's probably one of the last guys from this, Stanford regime at tight end. This is certainly a typical Stanford tight end. He's going to be the last one from the Shaw days, though. This group was talented last year, loses its best players due to graduations. C.J. Hawkins is 6'5", 230, appears to be in the slot with a lack of options. John Humphrey's real good hands. He's a veteran that should see a big increase in production. Wadiah Rubin has some versatility. He was used in the backfield a few times, only had 5 grabs, though. One of the better talents on this offense for sure. You look at quarterback, though, Nick, again, McKee departs. They failed to bring a transfer in, but Ari Patu is a big arm dual threat passer who has learned behind McKee the last few years. Ashton Daniels also saw some time, mainly showcased his abilities as a runner. This isn't a bad QB room here, I don't think. I think Shaw certainly had some confidence in these guys because they also got on the field despite having an NFL prospect under center. I think he was just trying, kind of grasping at straws, trying to figure out some different things that might work for this program. Not all that concerned with the quarterback position, but the talent around him, not good.
Tough to replace a guy like McKee, who's pretty solid. I mean, it looked good at the Senior Bowl, played pretty well this past season, 2,900 yards. Tough to replace that. Yursick's a great tight end. I think he's a big, physical guy. I like him a lot. 49 grabs for 445 yards this past season, 1 touchdown for him. Humphrey's a good player, underrated guy. Going to step out here and be that breakout player for me, 348 yards on 29 grabs and 1 score for him. Rubin as well. I like him to break out. I think he's got a lot of catches coming his way. Very limited catches in the past season, but he's got some serious potential. C.J. Hawkins, he could step up in the slot. I like him kind of slotting in there in the slot. It's not a great unit. There are some nice players with good hands and some nice production potential there, but overall the raw production is just missing.
And looking at the running back room, they returned their 2 top rushers. Casey Filkins was a bit of a bully last year. Some tough, hard-earned yards from him. E.J. Smith, he's an explosive player that can catch the ball out wide if need be. His return for them from injury is good news. Biggest problem, though, was only played 2 games last year, Nick, and he was the second leading rusher at 206 yards. That is a massive red flag, only 107 yards per game for this ground attack. I do think they have a nice little duo here, but they're going to need some help to produce. I just don't see that happening. I think Smith, though, could be in for a good year, obviously with his lineage. But overall, this offense, not great. C for me. Offensive line needs to get better to help this ground game out a bit. And, obviously they're going to transition to a more revolutionary offense. That's Troy Taylor's calling here. You only return 2 starters. Now you want to transfer schemes. It might be beneficial for him. Actually, Nick, you look at these numbers up top, not good one bit. They might somehow be better with a scheme change. Usually it's the opposite. What are your kind of thoughts on what's expected for this offense this year? It's not going to be much, though.
Schematic change might help. Like you said, it's completely possible that schematic change does help due to some of these weapons they have at wide receiver and tight end. I like E.J. Smith. It is concerning that he only played 2 games and he was the second leading rusher. But if he's fully healthy, he's a very talented back, nice speed. I mean, 6.9 yards per carry in the limited touches for him. So I think the sky's the limit with him and Felkins as well. He's a decent back in terms of receptions as well. They use him in the backfield as a receiver, sometimes 17 grabs for him and 205 yards. So don't sleep on that. 478 yards on the ground and 4 scores for him. So that's a nice 1-2 punch there. This offense is the epitome of mid. They're a C offense. There's not much you can look at. The schematic change may help. I think it is positive. They're going to transition a little bit here and kind of swap this up and try to focus on more of a passing potential opportunity. The passing wasn't bad at 254 yards per game this past season, so you can certainly find a way to improve in that. And I think some of the talents they have at wide receiver and tight end have potential to break out. It's just a very mid offense, and it's the epitome of a mid team to below average team here.
The top 3 rushers all played less than 8 games, so health was a bit of an issue. That's not great when these guys don't play that many games. They still end up being top producers. Look at the defensive side of the ball. It wasn't any better for them in the portal. Lost 11 guys, added only 1. They returned 4 starters. They lose 6 of their top 7 tacklers. 23 sacks was slightly better than expected. Looking at the defensive line, I figured that David Bailey, a high-end 4-star, would be the biggest true freshman impact recruit in the pack, and he was really good. He was the team's best run defender, showcased some efficiency as a pass rusher. Lance Keenley wasn't all that bad, but needs to bring some more production to the table. Ernest Cooper, he was a standout, was very good in his 4 games as a true freshman. Wanted to preserve that red shirt going forward. 2 young guys off the edge is certainly encouraging for this football team. The biggest concern I rose over the last 2 years, especially last year, Nick, was the interior D-line. They have no size. They have no depth. Doesn't get any better. Anthony Franklin, 6'3", 267. He was flat out awful for him. Tobin Phillips, just as bad, a little better at 295 in terms of size. Zach Roel didn't see any time last year. He's about 280 pounds. Zach Buckley, only a few snaps. He's also 265 pounds. The pass rush should be around the same. I'd say maybe 25 sacks. That's a respectable number, I guess, for what they're working with. But the run defense is still in for a rough go. I expected them to be one of the worst last year against the run because of the concerns on the interior D-line. I figured the linebackers get beat up a lot. It's exactly what happened, Nick. 127th against the run. They were awfully poor. It wasn't hard to see this coming.
The pass rush is actually pretty solid here. I think there are some nice pieces. David Bailey, I like him a lot. Good breakout player last year, true freshman, has a lot of potential. 43 total tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks for him. Lance Keeley as well. 9 games for him, 25 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, plus a sack for him. Ernest Cooper, like you said, tried to preserve that red shirt by playing like 4 games with 12 tackles, 3.5 for loss, and 1 sack for him. The numbers are not bad in terms of raw production from this defensive line. They can get after the quarterback, which I think is a positive thing. If you notice that Anthony Franklin as well is another piece on the interior that's not bad with 15 total tackles this past season. So those are some impressive numbers there, but the depth is lacking, and outside of that, this team is very poor on defense.
The linebacking core, Tristan Sinclair, he was poor versus the run, didn't produce much at all. Issei Duburi didn't play at all last year. Gathan Berndahl was a good productive run defender for FIU. Very happy with the production he had for them over at Ford International. Senior Spencer Jurgensen only saw the field a few times last year. It wasn't good. This group certainly had its hands full with the defensive line they played behind. Depth isn't good. These guys will have a lot of wear and tear on the body again this year. Berndahl, I don't know what he's trying to prove here coming over to Stanford, because this is going to be a tough year for him. This is a player I imagine probably had some offers, probably go to some other programs after a big season for FIU. That's the one bright spot I think they have for the middle of this defense. I really don't know what scheme they're going to run with on this side of the ball. Bobby April, of course, working at Wisconsin, a bit of a 3-4 scheme. We'll see what they do this year, but regardless, I think the linebackers are going to be in for a tough season once again, because the defensive line is not going to do them any favors. They're going to have to, be in that 800 to 900 snaps per if they play the full season range. And that's not going to do great for health, Nick. I think they're going to struggle once again.
Sinclair's not a bad piece, 37 total tackles, just poor against the run for him. And you bring in a guy like Berndahl from FIU, good productive run defender, nice step up. But overall, this linebacker unit lacks depth. Those 2 guys there are really the only 2 pieces that have any sort of value. This unit's going to struggle across the board.
Berndahl's 103 tackles led the Golden Panthers a season ago. They're hoping they can get some production out of him in the middle. Looking at the DB unit, much like the wide receiver group, secondary last year had some key pieces, and they played quite well for this football team. But look at it now. They're all gone. They've graduated or went to the NFL. It's going to be a tough season. Colin Wright only played in 3 games. They wanted to keep his red shirt. He was a sturdy run defender, but in his first year as a starter at cornerback versus this conference's wide receivers, likely to have a tough time. Drahan Manley has been quite solid in coverage over his career, but missed all of last year, only a few games in 2021, so he's barely seen the field recently. Armari Porter wasn't great, likely to be in the slot. Look at the safety group. Scotty Edwards, redshirt freshman, only played 1 game. Mitch Leiber, redshirt sophomore, converted running back. I think he was the 3rd leading rusher actually last year for them. He's going to play at the back end now. Jaden Skolem, only 1 game. Alkai Gilman played in 10 games, was an impressive tackler. That was about it. He didn't really produce much in other areas. The roster is just a complete mess, Nick. When you look at the secondary, look at the youth, you look at a converted running back. The run game last year was bad, and I predicted that one easily. The run defense, that is. You look at the pass defense, and I think they're going to join them in the same category. This is just not good.
Very poor unit. There's just no talent really here. There's a lot of guys who have a lot to prove. Returning really absolutely nobody. Very difficult. Wright was good in his 3 games, but he got his red shirt. This is a very tough unit. They're going to get torched this year through the air.
I'm going to schedule preview and prediction. David Shaw gives up after a horrendous past couple seasons. I think that's the best way to say it, Nick. I think Shaw just gave up. Writing was on the wall. He was probably going to be axed sometime soon anyways. Complete disaster of a team in the trenches. The best talent they did have all departed as the eligibility ran out. Some of Shaw's last good examples of work are off to better things. The edge duo, Bailey and Cooper, is the only thing this defense really has going for them. I think maybe the running back duo is a positive for the offense. I really don't know. This team's going to be awful. Program is at rock bottom while the Pac-12 future is in flux. This is just scary for the Cardinal, Nick. If you only watch college football, you think this program is terrible. They're great in other sports. They're certainly desirable, in a variety of different ways. But when it comes to football right here, with what's going on, this is just not a good match for the Pac-12 trying to ink a TV deal. 2-10 is the prediction. I think they'll beat Taylor's old school, Sac State, and I think they'll beat at Hawaii. But I'm not even confident they can go on the road and beat the Rainbow Warriors. Tough year all around. Don't see Stanford doing anything. This is going to be an easy team to pick against if you're a fantasy player or just straight up betting against them. A lot of free money on the table this year against the Cardinal.
I'm not even confident they're going to beat Hawaii. I agree with you. This is a complete disaster season loading for Stanford here. And I think it creates a bigger question about the future of this football program. I don't know how realistic this is, but there's a complete possibility, in my opinion, that they abandon football at a school like Stanford, because as you alluded to, they're really talented. A lot of other sports are constantly in the running for the Capital One Cup, which is the trophy that's awarded to the best athletic program overall in terms of athletic department, in terms of pure when they're great at swimming, track and field, sports of that nature. Baseball, they have a good baseball program. So certainly there's a lot of talent in the athletic department at Stanford. It's just not at football. I think it would be disappointing to see a historic program that has historic rivals with Notre Dame and Cal be, abandoned. They're kind of left behind here with the Pac-12 reshuffling. And I think it would be disappointing to see them drop football, but I think it's not completely out of the realm of possibility at this point in time, considering the state of the program. This team has really no talent at all outside of Bailey at defensive end and maybe some of the running back room and a couple of the wide receivers here and there. They're in a tough spot here. I would not want to be a Stanford fan. It's going to be a tough year. It's going to be a tough, 5-10 years. They might go independent. That's another option at this point. It's a complete mess. I really don't know what direction they go with the Pac-12 collapsing overnight. I think they're in a tough spot, and Cal's in a tough spot too. But I think Stanford's in a very, very precarious situation because at least Cal, they're going to win some games this year. We picked them to win, 5-6 games. This Stanford team, they'll be lucky to get 2 wins. They might not even get one. They could lose to Sacramento State on any given Saturday. So this is a tough season. They're going to find themselves in a very difficult situation. Troy Taylor's got his work cut out for him.
Yeah, a lot of the characteristics this team envisioned and embodied the past couple years, or in the early 2010s, that is, nowhere to be found nowadays. Unfortunate to see what happens. Looks like they're headed back to the pre-Harbaugh days. Stanford's reign at the top is long gone. It will not be back for a long time. It's going to be it for today's episode. Nick, I appreciate you joining me, talking about this mess of a football team. A lot of storylines to keep us interested, though.
Yeah, I really don't like ragging on teams when this roster's just this bad and there's so many question marks. You kind of have to do it. I feel bad for the Stanford fans that truly are been with the team forever. I mean, this team's historic. They played in the band game in the 80s against Cal. Historic rivalry. Been in the Rose Bowl several times. Couple Rose Bowl wins. Pac-12 titles. We're far away from that, and it's sad to see a program just fall apart like this, and it's disappointing.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.